Love is powerful. Vulnerability is human. But in the wrong hands, both can be weaponized. Romance scammers don't just steal hearts. They steal life savings, dignity, and sometimes even lives. The tactics are sophisticated. The damage is real. And no one is immune. I'm Laurel House, international dating and relationship coach for over 15 years. 5-time published author and eHarmony relationship expert. I've coached thousands of people to find real love and recover from heartbreak. And, yes, I've been romance scammed too. My insight is both professional and personal.
And I am Dr. Carmen, a criminologist, an expert on crime prevention, a consultant to hundreds of law enforcement agencies, and for over 20 years, I have studied the criminal mind. I've trained agents at the National Academy in Quantico. I testified in federal courts, and I worked cases where scammers have stolen millions. I just don't find and study these predators. I help them hunt them down.
Together, we bring both sides of the story, the criminal mind and the dating mind, because healthy love builds trust. Predators exploit it.
Manipulation is their weapon, but truth is ours.
We're exposing the lies and protecting love. This is RomConned. So, why now? Romance scams are among the fastest growing crimes in the U.S., costing victims over $1.3 billion annually. Divorced, widowed, and disabled women over 40 are disproportionately targeted as dating apps, social media, and AI deepfakes create new avenues for deception. RomConned arrives at a cultural moment when audiences crave both true crime storytelling and real tools for protection, healing, and empowerment. Dr. Carmen, you know about this more than anyone in terms of the why now. What are you seeing when it comes to romance scams?
Well, Laurel, I think it's actually the opportunity is right for many scam artists. The times are desperate. These folks have never had the access to technology, the access to people, the way that they have it now. And so the more technology and the easier it is for them to have access to your home, to where you work, to your personal lives, to be able to learn about you, the faster it is for them to scam you.
But what do you mean that they have access to us? Why? Like, I am sitting in my home, just on the internet, on my phone. How are scammers getting access to me? And to all of the people, right? Like to the old lady who lives next door.
Well, first of all, they have access to public information, which means access to you, right? So we can Google your name, for instance. And if we go into the right Google source, we'll be able to find likely where you live, at least the town where you are, perhaps the neighborhood, the homes that you've sold, how much you sold them for, any kind of civil and criminal records that are found publicly, whether or not you were divorced, how many children you have, whether or not those children are in your custody. I can go on, right? But the information that is out there for people that are ill intent is incredible, right? So, you can go into the garbage can and the garbage bags of people that are putting their garbage bags outside every Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, whatever pickup day you have, go through the garbage and I can find out what your spending pattern is.
So those techniques are also still used. So it's not just about going online and the internet. It's also those old school techniques of actually going into your trash cans.
Well, they can use them as well. The right answer to your question is all of the above. But at the same time, keep in mind that criminals are now more sophisticated. They don't want to get dirty or smell your garbage for the most part. And so they're likely going to want to be in the comfort of their own home or office, being able to find information about you.
And the truth is that you don't have to be a public figure in order for people to find information about you online. Just because you aren't Laurel House or Dr. Carmen with a lot of information online about you doesn't mean that you sold a house, you bought a car, you had a place of business, you have children. There are records about, I would say, pretty much everybody online. And that's kind of the scary thing.
It is a frightening thing. And the more you know, the less trustworthy you are to other people that you come across, right? But look, even if you have a rather quiet life, even to those individuals that may actually be sitting back thinking, well, gee, I don't go out anyway. I don't use my credit cards anyhow. I don't even order DoorDash to have anything delivered at home. So how would they even know where I live? Well, the fact that everything is digital now, right? Your mortgage payment, your light bill payment, your water payment, a lot of these pieces of information where you yourself interact with the community, interact with the world. Those are all subjects to somebody being able to have access to them and finding out information about you that goes beyond your name and your address.
RomCons, though, don't just steal money. They steal trust, dignity, and security. Victims face, yes, financial loss and also emotional trauma and even legal or identity risks. But knowledge and awareness can turn that pain into power. And that's why we're here, because the damage goes beyond the money. The predators can exploit in so many different ways, and we want to protect.
Yeah, and not only that, these are the best of the best, right? In the sense that they are so skilled. They know how to move their lips, move their eyes. They know how to wink. They know how to dress. They know the things that you like and don't like. They pay attention to detail. You know how sometimes in relationships people say, well, I just cannot believe that he didn't even notice the shoes that I was wearing. Or she didn't even notice the fact that I had my degree on the wall. Things that I'm sure in your area you hear a lot from both sides. Well, these scam artists, these individuals that are looking to manipulate into a romance/con component are people that pay attention to every detail about you, about the people that surround you, so they can use everything at their disposal to begin the manipulation period.
I hear people who say, my gosh, how could they have fallen for that? How stupid can you be? But we believe rom-conners, romance con artists, because they are skilled at exploiting both human psychology and natural relationship dynamics. Some romance scammers use tested scripts that have worked on thousands before. They often target actually educated, independent people because those individuals have resources and don't think of themselves as easy victims. Is that something that you see a lot of?
Absolutely. And not only that the fact that you're smart and that you're educated doesn't mean that you're not vulnerable, right? The things that make you vulnerable are your lack of time, which oftentimes people that are successful don't have much time because they're constantly working or spending time in building, say, their businesses or their companies or whatnot. Secondly, they're not paying attention to detail. And thirdly, with the other part of it is that they become vulnerable by their own isolation from the rest of the social community because they're so focused on work that they just don't even think about the things that somebody else perhaps they don't have that kind of lifestyle, they would easily pick up on.
And that's why they have us.
That's why they have us.
So that we can do that work for them, because being scammed is not about being foolish. It's about being human with normal needs for connection, hope, and trust, and love, which is why it is a rom-con, because love is and connection is what we all need and want. We don't believe rom-conners because we're naive. We believe them because they exploit the very qualities that make us human, which are hope, empathy, and the desire to love and be loved. But there are lots of different styles of rom-cons. And interestingly, I think people might think, oh, it's not a rom-con because they didn't steal $100,000 from me. But the truth is that there are levels to rom-cons. So there's the lower level rom-cons like catfishing, which there's a TV show called Catfishing. It's been known for a long time. It's using fake photos, fake jobs, fake lives, validation, small favors. You can actually be conned because the conner is protecting themselves. They feel insecure about what they look like or what their job is. So they create this persona in order for self-protection. They're not even thinking about you. They're not even thinking, am I hurting another person? All they're thinking, am I protecting myself? And then maybe once you fall in love with them, maybe then they can introduce you to the real them. and you won't care that they don't look like they presented. They have a different age. It's these small cons, ghosting and breadcrumbing. Those are cons. Dine and dash dates, those are cons. Just emotional manipulation where you're keeping someone hooked. That is a con.
Right. And it doesn't have to be for millions of dollars either, right? I mean, keep in mind that people oftentimes they think, well, I'm not a subject to being conned because this was just a couple of $1,000s, or this was just so minor. The manipulation was so small and so limited that I wouldn't even call the police on this, right? But the reality is that we don't know what we don't know about the actual figure of the people that are victimized on a daily basis, because most of the crime that takes place in this forum is never reported, believe it or not.
I mean, I absolutely believe it. I didn't report my con, because of shame. And my con did involve money. It wasn't one of the small ones. But when you start to think back about cons, when you think back about your involvement with the conner, and did I send them sexy photos of myself? Did I send important private information? It's what does this person now know about me, and how important is that information to me? It isn't just about the money. So it's the deception, right? It's that exploitation. And then what are they gaining? So yes, the financial loss, romance scam victims cost in the US alone over $1.3 billion. And that is, as you said, those are the reported cons, because people are afraid. And then there's the emotional toll, the feeling like it was a double betrayal, because not only was it the financial loss, but it was also the emotional. And people can experience shame, guilt, depression, anxiety, PTSD-like symptoms. They have a loss of self-trust and social withdrawal. Many are reluctant to report scams because they fear judgment or blame. They fear the people who say, my gosh, how could you be so stupid? And that's something that happens all the time. What's going on? Because you seem to be a little bit unsure. Honestly, I don't know. There were some strange things that were happening, and I started asking questions, and I felt like his answers didn't align with how he portrayed himself. When something feels off, that's your intuition, bringing awareness to the fact that you have some questions. There's a website that I love called Truthfinder. Truthfinder can help us figure out if these are real red flags or if he's the real deal. We do a little bit of a background check. Truthfinder is a great way to simply deliver police records, arrest records, criminal records, speeding tickets, bankruptcy court records, voter registration data, social media handles, phone numbers, home addresses, email addresses, and possible relatives. And you know what we can learn from that? If he's actually married or if he's single. And you know what? While we're at it, it's not a bad idea to do a little search on you too, just to see what's out there, what people can find about you. You know what? I think it's a really good idea. This is going to give me so much more confidence dating. And I would like to do that search on me too. What if someone thinks that I'm fake? So we're going to go into some cons, and every episode we're going to talk about real cons. Today, because it's our first episode, we're going to talk about my real cons. It doesn't just happen on dating apps, but it does for some people. I actually went on a date with someone else. So I met someone on a dating app. They seemed really nice. We had a great connection. There were lots of photos of this guy. And when I went out with him, he wasn't the person in the photos. I was looking at him like, you look very similar, but you don't look like the person. And then I realized the guy was the guy on the side. He was talking about his brother all the time. Well, the main person in the photos was his brother and not himself. Hey, what do you think about that?
It's incredibly clever, right? Because you can't say that the guy deceived you 100%, right? You can just say that you were misdirected, that you looked at one person versus the other. And so you're not to be to feel betrayed. You're to feel perhaps confused, but not betrayed. So the intentionality is removed from the equation, right?
And it was interesting because when I did call him out on it, I said, you don't look like the guy in your photos. And he's like, oh, yeah, the main guy in my photos, that's my brother, but he passed away. And so I really wanted to highlight my brother and honor him and sort of date for him. And I thought, that's nice that you want to honor him and date for him. And you're the one who's dating and you don't look like your brother. So the fact that he manipulated me in that way made me not want to go out with him again, even though he was a really nice guy. Just that initial manipulation was an issue for me.
Well, not only that, notice the fact that first, when he first meets you and you actually question him on it, which he was not surprised, I'm sure, then he turns around and he gives you a very noble story, a story that is supposed to move you, a story where he's supposed to be elevated beyond the scope of where you have him at this point, which is below the threshold of acceptance.
Right.
And so what he's done is he's actually appealing to a higher authority, is what we say in criminology, which means, oh, but don't you know, I have lost a loved one. And I'm just memorializing their memory through you. So you're part of the solution. And you see, I'm really a nice guy because what I was doing, even though it's a lie, it was actually done in order to help him out.
Right.
So you're supposed to feel sorry for him. So your feeling of being sorry for him is supposed to overcome your suspiciousness and your anger that you were lied to.
Right. So that's the sob story style, which is a typical style of a rom-com. Okay, so how about this one? So I met this guy on Facebook and seemed really nice. We were talking about that we're both very driven. We have lots of dreams. We are doing so much in our lives. He was talking about this company that he started and it's so successful. And he seemed, very aligned with me. So we decided to meet at a restaurant for drinks. And I saw that he was walking to the restaurant, which I thought, that's interesting. But, maybe he parked far away. And we went in, we had drinks. And then he said, oh, I forgot my wallet. I'm so sorry. And I just, okay, fine, I'll pay. And then he wanted to go and get a drink somewhere else that was a little bit further. And he said, well, why don't we drive? And I said, okay, I'll meet you there. And he said, no, I'll just go in your car. And I thought, okay, that's a little strange, but okay. So we went to the second place and then things started to come out. And I said, where do you live? And he's like, oh, well, I'm sleeping on a friend's sofa right now. I'm in between places. And I started asking him about his job. And he's like, well, I'm in between jobs. And so it turned out that what he had presented to me on Facebook and through our phone calls prior was his future dreams. It wasn't who he was at the moment. In fact, he was homeless. That's why he didn't have his wallet. And he walked to the date because he was, couch surfing and he doesn't have a car.
Right. And so first of all, he shows up and essentially you see him walking over to you, which in some parts of the United States, that's not unusual, right? In New England, people take the train everywhere they go because they'd rather do that than the inconvenience of having to have a parking spot. Nevertheless, you're probably in LA and this is happening where everybody drives everywhere and you don't see him drive. And so that's a concern. And I get that. But that wouldn't have concerned me as much as what he does next, right? Which is sitting down with you, having a cocktail or two without having his wallet, on him. Now, think about the fact that how do you reconcile the fact that he told you that he was a go-getter, that he was a planner, that he had dreams, that he had aspirations. You're sharing all of this with somebody and then you're showing up on their first acquaintance or date and you don't have money to pay for a drink other than being embarrassing, because it is embarrassing to anybody. Secondly, to a person that is driven, to a person that is a planner, I'm sorry, you just don't forget your wallet. And by the way, nowadays, they actually carry their wallets on their phones. And they carry their credit cards on their phones or their iWatches, right? So you could have easily paid that way had he actually had the money on him anyway. So I don't buy it, right? And then the fact that he's asking you for a ride, again, place of vulnerability, being able to tell you, well, but he went at it. You know where he failed? First of all, he was doing this to you. and you're obviously experienced and smart. But then secondly, you know where he failed also?
Tell
He
me.
failed in the fact that he was doing it too fast, too quickly, and all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That shows you that the fact that he is a novice. Had he actually been a trained con artist, somebody that actually would have wanted to really get as much as he would have wanted to from you over a period of time, it would have been one drink, one wallet, one night at a time, and then things would have escalated to the extent that you would have been paying him for all sorts of things, and it would have gone into something else, right?
So maybe he would have like brought $40, even if he's homeless. He could have brought $40, paid for those drinks, because in the future, then maybe I would have started paying for things.
Or bought a watch, for a day, or borrowed it from a friend, a nice
Right.
Rolex that he would have shown up with, where you would have paid attention to that. He would have had the Ferragamo shoes. He would have sat across the table and ordered a sophisticated drink that he probably memorized the name the night before. And he would have sat there and talked to you about the stock market, which he just committed to memory 3 minutes on his way to you, and then
Right.
pretended to be all of these things that he really wanted to be one day, but he's not, right?
Right.
So that he could impress you, he could throw you completely off. Because ultimately, you got to remember too, Laurel, that in spite of people being bright and being smart and being savvy, and all of us thinking that we're immune from being victims of these types of crimes, we really want to believe.
Yeah.
We really want this to be true. And so our greatest bias and vulnerability is not even the con artist. Our greatest bias and vulnerability is the fact that we as victims want this to work out so badly because we believe that this is really happening, that this is really real, and that I'm worth it.
And I love love. I believe people. I give people the benefit of the doubt. And I also like to inspire and uplift people. So I think that there was a past me who would have said, you know what? It's okay that you're homeless, you're couch surfing, you have these big dreams. Let me help you accomplish these dreams. You can, move in with me, and I will help you to rise up because I believe in you. The problem is that, there's the con. And that is what happens with so many people.
But why do you think he didn't choose that route of being honest with you? Just because you mow lawns doesn't mean that you're going to mow lawns all the time. Why do you think he chose not to go there, aside from the fact that instinctively he would have done it anyway? But why is it that he chose not to be upfront and honest with you?
Because I don't think he was truly looking for love. I think that he was looking for a fun night. I think it was, hey, I'm lonely. Let me hang out with this hot chick tonight and have a good time. There was no long-term planning with him, despite the fact that he said that he has all of these big plans. I think for him, he wanted to do these things to slowly make me more connected with him and make me a little bit more vulnerable, revealing those layers, getting in my car initially so that it'll be easier for him to get in my car again at the end of the date, and then maybe go home with me and have a fun night. And that's it. Because I don't think that all conners are looking for the long term. Some conners are just looking for that momentary physical pleasure that they're in need of.
I also think it could be the case in this one. This guy probably thought that his stock was not higher than it could be in order for him to be honest with you, right? So,
Yeah.
so part of it also was, why not come up to somebody and say, oh, by the way, I'm broke, I'm homeless, I want to just hang out tonight and have a fun night. Are you willing to do that? Versus having somebody go through all the trouble. It takes a lot of energy, right? And it takes a lot of effort to con somebody, right?
Yep.
On their end.
Yep.
And so why go through all that? And that's probably because at some point he sort of measured the equation that you wouldn't necessarily fall for the vulnerability of him being vulnerable, right? So he was like, well, I've got to con her. It's the only way that I'm going to be able to get in her car.
Right. And that goes into that shame also. He may have actually really been interested in a relationship with me, but I'm not going to like someone like that. So he's going to pretend that he is this person because he feels shame, he feels insecurity. And then in the future, maybe he'll tell me the truth, or maybe he'll keep up the con, which is what happens with so many people, is that that con keeps going. So here's another con, and this also happened to me, and this happens to a lot of people. And I'm sure that you even experience this. You don't have to be singled on dating apps communicating with people in order to fall for this one. This is when you get a random text that says, "Hey, I'm on my way," or "Hey, how's it going? Are you free to chat?" So I, one lonely night, received a text from someone that said, "Hey, I'm on my way." And I responded and said, "On your way where?" And he's like, "What do you mean? To meet you. I'm so sorry I'm late." And I said, "You have the wrong person." So he sends a photo of himself getting a haircut, like really casual, and says, I'm stuck getting a haircut, but I'll be there soon." So we start going back and forth of me saying wrong person, and then the conversation begins. So somehow, I think I was just in a low point in my life. We start communicating all the time, start texting all the time, because he starts asking me these little questions and starts being vulnerable, revealing himself, sending me photos. And interestingly, he was from Kansas City, which is where I used to live. So he must have done research on me to see that I used to live in Kansas City, because he texted from a Kansas City numbers. I knew that area code. So we start communicating, and he's, "I want to meet you. I want to come to LA. And I said, "Well, let's video chat." "Oh, I can't because." There was always a because, why he couldn't see me on video. But until the end, when I finally blocked him, he was always saying, "I am not a con artist. I just am not comfortable doing video chats." And I would say, "Okay, then shoot a video of yourself holding a sign that says Laurel." I was doing all of these things of prove to me that you are who you say you are, because I also saved some of his photos. When he would send me a photo, I would download it into my phone, and then, where is it? I can't find it. But I would scroll back years, and there it is. Obviously, it's not a new photo. This is a photo, a selfie that he took 5 years ago, and is claiming that he took it just now, which is a way to see if it's true.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when people text you and say, "Hey, Bill," this is one of their favorite ones, right? That they call people Bill.
That's
You may get
interesting.
they choose that name for whatever reasons. They must have done research on it to find out that that's a very common name, in the United States. But oftentimes you hear somebody call and say, "Hey, Bill, this is so and so. Listen, I'm sorry I'm calling you so late, but," and here comes the story. So the idea is to be able to use words that they have tested out in the field. And I hate to use that word because it almost makes it scientific, right? What in reality is all about scamming people. But they've used these words in the field to be able to get your attention, and they're open-ended. Typically, there are things like, "Hey, how's it going? I understand that things are not going well in the United States. And you are, again, in what state again? I forgot since our last conversation." And so they begin to sort of throw in there all of these potential hooks, right? To get you to start talking, to get you to start saying, "So, hey, by the way, how's the weather?" And then they're literally in front of a computer trying to figure out weather patterns to see which part of the U.S. you're in. "Hey, are you in the middle of the storms?" When for instance, that in Kansas City, they're facing storms as the call is being made. So when there's a temperature variance, they're able to at least put you in a location, right? And then once they get you to start talking, and once they start zeroing in into your geography, then things become a lot easier, because then they have things that are in common that they can talk to you about, right? And in this particular case where he was texting back and forth, I promise you there were multiple texts being sent to multiple people at the same time.
Yeah.
And then they're going by those individuals that, actually took a bite out of that equation, as
Right.
you did. And
Yeah.
then they started following up with them, and then establishing a relationship, and then "Hey, how's it going?" Something that they can actually nurture over a course of time.
Yeah. But one of the ways that you can see is they will never get on the phone with you. They will never get on a video call with you. You never hear their voice. All you're doing is seeing photos. Who is this person? Really? You could probably take that photo and Google image search it and find that photo belongs to somebody else. It's not the person. And there are actually AI deepfakes now where you can go and they can create as if he's talking to you, moving his mouth so it looks like you're having a conversation. He could have actually done a quick video call with me using that where he creates a "Hi, Laurel, how are you doing?" And it looks like, the mouth is moving correctly, but it's actually just a bunch of photos that have been manipulated. And that is just so scary and so I probably get texts every day from someone saying, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, what are you up to? Hey, do you have time to chat?" And I just say, "I don't know you." And I don't respond again because I'm not going to open myself up. Okay, now is the big one. So I was RomConned for real. Now, this was years ago, and I met this guy through work. I actually knew that this person existed. He ran a company, and he lived in another country. We got to know each other through Skype and through email and text. He made me feel special because I was the one person of the group of people who worked for him who he really gave attention to. And after 6 months of talking all day and night and exposing our deep secrets, he was saying that he wanted to move to LA to be with me. He told me to contact a realtor and that this was my budget. And we started to imagine a life together. So he said, why don't you come out and meet me in London and get yourself first class tickets. Of course, I'll reimburse you. So I bought myself first class tickets, and he kept saying, "Oh, for some reason, the money's not going through. I don't know why. It's my credit card isn't working internationally. The bank isn't going through. It kept on, the money isn't coming, and I don't know why." So anyway, we get to a point, and I was now thinking, this is weird. Something is off, but I really wanted to believe. I really did, because over the 6 months, he created this fantasy of what life would look like. So he told me before I left, he said, "Look, leave your cell phone because I'm going to get you an international phone when you're here. My assistant's going to bring it to you. So don't worry. We're going to be staying at my house, and, all expenses will be paid as soon as you arrive." I brought my phone, thankfully, and I arrive, and the guy looked a little different than I saw him on video Skype. He was much more petite. He had sort of a different energy than he put out. And he said, "Look, we're not going to be able to stay at my estate." Oh, and by the way, he had sent videos of his house it looked like it was like realtor videos. So it was this amazing estate. So he said, "We're not going to be able to stay at my estate because a family member passed. So I have a bunch of family staying there. So we're going to go to a hotel instead." So we go to this hotel, and he's like, "Why don't you just sit over there and I'm going to check us in?" And I see that he's arguing with the people at the front desk, which I thought was a little bit strange. And finally he's like, "Okay, we're good. Let's go to our room." So we go to the room, we have a nice time, and I said I wanted to go to the spa, and he's like, "You don't want to go to the spa. They do really bad massages here." So it was just strange things. And we were at a location so far out in the country that there was no cell service. So all of these awkward encounters were happening. And then he said, "I really want to go to the cemetery. My child passed at birth. He was stillborn, and I want to go to the cemetery and see." So we go to the cemetery, and there's all of these, beautiful grave sites. And then there's this one that just looks like it was thrown together. It was weird. It didn't have a tombstone. It was strange. And he said, "This is where my stillborn is buried." And he showed me a photo of a dead baby. And then he says, "God, it's so easy to die. I could kill you really easily." And I started getting really scared. So he's like, "We should get married." So we get on a train, and I'm scared and kind of like being well behaved now. So we go on a train, and he's taking selfies of me and him together. We go to a store, and he's like, "I'm going to get you an engagement ring. You wait here." So I was waiting in this one store. Hours later, he comes back dripping in sweat with this little ring after saying that he's going to get me an 8-carat ring. And he comes and he gives me this teeny little ring, and he's like, "This is what you have for now, and I've ordered another one," dripping in sweat. So all of these weird things were happening where we would go out, and he'd say, "Oh, my grandma wants to meet you. I'm going to go outside and wait for her." And then an hour later, he comes in, and he's like, "She couldn't show up." Again, dripping in sweat. All of these weird things. So we go out and meet someone who was part of the team, and she says, Laurel, something is wrong here. This guy has been acting really. He pawned a computer the other day and he didn't pay. The transaction didn't go through. He contacted this person and told them that he needed to borrow $5,000. Contacted me and said he needed to borrow 1,000. Things aren't adding up and things are getting strange. Honestly, I think that you're not safe. So she's telling me this in the bathroom, trying to like remove me from the situation. The guy walks into the woman's bathroom and is like, what are you guys talking about? And I said, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I think that I need to go home. And he's like, you are not leaving alive. So all of a sudden, now I know I am in trouble. And I said, I need to go to a hotel near the airport. And so he allowed me to go to this hotel near the airport, and he stayed outside of my hotel door. And he told me I'm not going back to Los Angeles alive. And he was, telling me all of these threatening things. And I contacted a friend of mine who is a police officer, and he was trying to figure out how to get me out. I was looking in the peephole the whole night, and I saw that he wasn't out there for a moment. And I went out and ran and went to the airport and came home. And I was so shaken up that every time I walked outside my house, I thought I saw him. And I didn't trust anybody. I didn't trust anyone's intentions. I was sure everyone was lying to me. I ended up having to move to another neighborhood in Los Angeles because this guy knew my address and I was afraid, and I needed a full reset. And it took me a couple of years to start trusting again. So, yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, you're not the only one that this has happened to, very sadly, right? And I know that's part of you sharing the story with our audience is the fact that you want other people to feel that, you yourself have been vulnerable as much as they have, right? And so, first of all. Secondly, I think that, when things don't seem right initially, they probably aren't. I think, God gave us an instinct that we all have, which is, and I think women in particular have a greater sensitivity to this than we men do, in the sense that when something's up, something's up, and so your first instincts that you had when he said, first of all, who tells you to leave your phone behind? Right. So that is a big no-no, right? I mean, you just pretty much go, if somebody tells you that you should leave your phone at your home, the answer to that is, absolutely no.
Right.
No way in hell I'm going to leave my phone at home. My phone is coming with me, right? And then you have to ask yourself the question, why would this person want me to leave my cell phone at home?
And part of that, and I forgot to say this part, the photos he was taking of me on the train, one of the reasons he didn't want me to have a phone, he manipulated one of the photos to look like I had a noose around my neck. And then he sent that photo to all of my family members and friends. So when I was there, all of them got a photo of me with a noose. Because I had my phone, they all texted me and said, Laurel, are you okay? I just received a photo of you being hung. What's going on?
Yeah. And that right there tells you that he wanted an audience, right? He wanted an audience of how he was manipulating you so that the audience would react. So he didn't just want to harm you. He wanted your reputation to be harmed, but he also wanted an audience for how creative in an evil way he was being, right? That's what a lot of criminals do. Secondly, anytime you leave the United States, that's another question mark. It's like, well, once you leave the U.S., these predators know that outside the United States, the U.S., law enforcement community is very limited. We still have some resources that we can use. That's why U.S. embassies are so important. That's why knowing the terminology that you need to know, like, for instance, the legats, which is the legal attaches at the U.S. embassies that the FBI typically has in place. It's important that people know that, right? That they have those resources when they go overseas, that, if things go bad, run or go to your nearest U.S. embassy and seek refuge right away, right? So because being in that embassy, you are in United States territory, right? As per international law. The other part of this too is that, I think that it's always really, really smart to have somebody monitor your activities, either from back home or to go with you when you go. And I think for you, I mean, again, you were thinking this guy is great. This is really true. These images are real. This person could never lie to me. Like, who would ever spend the time in crafting, videos that are fake and sending me videos of, of mansions when in fact, they wouldn't own them, right? So who would ever
Right.
go through that? And then there's a part of us, all of us have this, Laurel, that we think we're smarter than the criminals, right? We think that we can outsmart the criminals because clearly you're not going to fool me.
Right.
I mean, I've been around, come
Right.
on.
I'm a dating coach.
All right, you're a dating coach, right? I'm a criminologist. You
Right.
you would never do that to me. And then you find yourselves that you were just lured into this equation because these folks study you. They
Right.
study the language that you use, the words that you use, the tone, I'm sure, of your conversations, your vulnerabilities, and they exploit those areas, right? It's almost like
Yeah.
somebody that's out to take you out, and then they begin to study the areas that are the weakest in your body so that they can do the most harm with the least amount of impact. And so,
Yeah.
so in this particular case, you see how this guy was luring you in to go all the way overseas on your own dime. And then once you get there, the story changes at the airport. At that point is when, if you would have gotten that far, I'm sure you've thought this over and over again, that's when you should have done an about face and headed back to the United States, right? Because at that point, it's like, yeah, somebody died. And this whole stuff about going to see your dead child. And I mean, it's like all of that is so manipulative. And at the same time, he wanted to confuse you. He wanted to keep you on your toes. He wanted you to hate him, but at the same time be suspicious of him, and at the same time feel sorry for him. So that when you have all those three emotions conflict and engage, you will be idle to take any action against him. You're going to be so confused as to what you need to do that the point of clarity for you was when he goes into the women's bathroom. And at that point, after you have this other person tell you, and then he walks in there, that's when you're like, okay, wait a minute. This is as far as you go, right? And I'm going. And then at that point, he basically kidnaps you, right? So, I mean, and that's kidnapping an American citizen overseas in a friendly country that has extradition with the United States, right? So if you really think about it from his perspective, it's being really, really dumb because had he done that in another country that is not a quote unquote friendly country to the United States, he would have had a bigger chance of harming you. I mean, you're not going to do that in England, which is our closest partner in Europe. We have, a lot of assets in the United States that are overseas, especially in Britain, that we could have used to rescue you, right? If we would have known that you were in harm. Oh, sure,
right?
Sure.
I was ashamed. It was, and the thing is that red flags are easy to spot in hindsight, but in the moment, hope and hormones can make them look like green lights or just make them look like confusion. So if we look at it stops here, right? Like if we think of what could I have done? When could I have stopped the con? There are multiple points when I could have stopped that con from happening, right? So I could have stopped it. I could have not gotten on the plane. You said you're going to send me the money. You didn't send me the money. This doesn't make sense. I could have stopped it there. Where else would I have stopped it? I guess when I landed and the story changed.
Right, because at that point you have clear proof. But also keep in mind too, and I'm sure that you've relived this moment often in your own mind, but think about the fact that when you were there, you're showing up after a long flight from the United States, especially if you're coming from LA, right? I mean, you're exhausted.
Yeah,
even if you flew business class, I mean, you're exhausted. You're going in there, all you want to do is hit a bed and go to sleep, and then you're showing up and the guy's like giving you what we call an audible in football, which is a last minute call, because you're just like, hey, by the way, we're going to scramble. Things happen since you left the United States. We've got to go. And you're thinking, of course I'm going to be accommodating because I just flew 10 hours, to see this guy who's amazing, and things happen and I want to be there for him and I want to be. So again, he is luring you to his plan based on the generosity of your heart. And that is where the brain has to kick in and tell the heart to knock it off, and say, by the way, sit down, chill out. Let me process this and let me bring back my resources and bring some logic behind it and head back. You will now have palpable evidence that the guy hasn't come through in the airline ticket and now in the accommodation plans that you had all along.
And then
so,
the cell phone. He kept on saying, Your new cell phone is coming. Your cell phone's coming every day. My phone didn't arrive. It was just lie after lie after lie. So,
Right.
I mean, really, we could talk about this con for days, and I have thought about it for days and weeks and months and years now. And the reality is that a lot of people have experienced it. And every episode moving forward, we're going to be talking about different cons and what you can do not only to spot the con, but the red flags and the it stops here. Where should it have stopped? Where can it stop next time? Plus the recovery. What do you do to get over it? How can you heal? Because the healing is a whole nother level. The reality is that being RomConned doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. I was RomConned too, and that's why I'm here, and that's why Dr. Carmen is here to help you protect your heart and still believe in real love, because you can't control the scammer's lies, but you can control your response, your healing, and your path toward real love. This is RomConned, helping you spot the lies, guard your heart, and reclaim your power. We've uncovered the lies, exposed the tactics, and given you the tools to protect your heart, your wallet, and your dignity. Remember, manipulation is their weapon, but truth is ours. Subscribe, report a RomCon, and protect yourself. Okay, yay!